All right, good Wednesday evening, everybody. Welcome to WARR Media's special NFL playoff preview. Also, too, we're going to talk a little Bears as well. We're wilding for Super Wild Card Weekend. My name is Lakina McGee. You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and Lakina_McGee on the IG. You listen to myself and my buddy Sydney Brown on Second City Sports Mondays and Fridays on Sports Zone Chicago on both the YouTube and the Facebook page. I'm being enjoyed tonight. We're going to be doing this every week during the playoffs. So about this time, about this day is same day as well, every Wednesday about this time. So make sure you guys check that out and make sure you have it set on your mark it on your calendars and such. So I got a couple of NFL experts with me today. You got the NFL expert for WARR Media, Mr. Joe Tanksley. What's up, Joe?
Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. And another good friend of the site, we got Mr. Eric Edlum, the NFL and NFL draft expert for Yahoo. What's up, Eric?
I'm doing well. Hope you guys are too.
No, but we got a lot to talk about. It's some little time to do it, so let's get into it. We'll start, of course, with the Bears coaching and also head coaching and GM vacancy. Of course, on a couple of days ago on Monday, if guys have been living under a rock. Both GM Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, the head coach, were both let go on Monday, part of Black Monday. And basically about there have been like 100 names being flown out there that are gonna that the Bears are going to interview for the job. Well, actually, first off, Joe, I'll start with you since you're one, the other expert also as well as Eric. What did you think of? What do you think about the search and George McCaskey's presser, and what do you think of all of that?
Well, I will say first off, George McCaskey is not good on the sticks. Uh, you know, for being making the right decision and letting go Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy together in tandem was the right thing to do because there was a lot of speculation that Pace might stick on, and as a GM he doesn't even have a really winning record, so that was a concern for a lot of fans. A lot of fans felt that Pace should be let go too, and we were happy as a group that he was let go along with Matt Nagy. Then you get to Monday, they have the press conference, and George gets up there and talks, and this little change to the structure in which they're going to do things. He lays out who's going to be a part of the search, and one of the names mentioned, Ted Phillips, even though he's so quote unquote being moved aside to take on the Arlington project, he's still going to be involved in the head coach and the GM search and interviews and things of that nature. He's going to negotiate that contract. That's what he does. But I think a lot of fans that they kind of turned down the excitement for fans a little bit, myself included. And then he goes into this whole rant about Olin Kreutz, saying calling him a liar and things like that, so to speak. And he says he's a fan, and and this is the thing about me. Football is the family business. You got to be more than a fan. You got to be a little bit more than a fan. And and I don't have anything against Bill Polian. He's accomplished, very accomplished, Hall of Fame football executive. But he's also the same. He might be dated. He's also the same guy that said Lamar Jackson should be a wide receiver. So you come and see that Lamar Jackson was an MVP as a quarterback. So it's things like that. I think that they got a lot of work to do, and I'm encouraged by the list of the candidates and the coaches that they have out there. But even with that, this is pretty much the hot group right now. So it's kind of hard to get that wrong either too. So we'll just see what they do. I am a little bit concerned about them interviewing GMs and coaches at the same time, because it looks like they could be put in a position where they would hire a coach before actually hiring a GM. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. I know they interviewed Glenn Cook and Doug Peterson today. And so I'm just, I'm really interested to see how this is played out. For all the excitement of letting go Pace and Nagy and having a new direction, it just seems like a lot of the same stuff is going to keep happening with the Bears.
What are your thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I think you bring up a couple of really good points there, which are, there is the concern, I think, from the outside of, is Ted just going to be on the Arlington Heights project, or is he still going to be involved in football decisions? How much say is George going to have over big decisions at all? You know, we know that he's mostly taken a back seat football wise, but you know, these are the two guys spearheading the interview process. And the other good point I thought you brought up was the concurrent interviews going back and forth. They can be overwhelming to talk to all these different people who, some of whom haven't worked together. They may have, you know, incongruous philosophies on football and building a roster. You know, the old model used to be hire the GM first and then they help pick the head coach, obviously. It doesn't feel like they're exactly going down that path. If they feel like they have a shot, this is my prediction. It's not based on anything I've heard from anybody inside the organization, but I think if they feel like Doug Peterson or Brian Flores, I'm just throwing those two names out there to start, if either of them show some real zeal about this job, they might, as you said, just go ahead and hire him. Let's just get the coach. We've got the name coach. You know, both guys have won Super Bowls. Brian as an assistant, Doug obviously as a head coach and also as a player for that matter. But, you know, and then let's pick the GM and let's just get somebody who's really good at evaluating talent and we'll figure it all out. You know, I mean, I remember how convoluted, and I talked to Phil about it when Phil Emery was interviewing head coaching candidates and talked to, I think, 21 different people, you know, flying all over the country and going back and forth and, you know, planes, trains, and automobiles and everything else, and ended up with Mark Trestman. He went out of the country to get a head coach, right? That's where that one ended up. It can get a little overwhelming. You forget what the first guy said. You forget what the second guy said. You don't have those initial impressions. So I do wonder about how convoluted this process might get. But, you know, they've gotten ahead on a couple guys, and I'll give them credit for that because, you know, I don't always feel like this organization is sort of up with the times on certain things and can pull off the moves that they want to pull off at times. So, you know, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. And Glenn Cook's an interesting name too. I mean, he's got Packers roots, played some minor league baseball. You know, he played at Miami football. He's worked his way up through the Browns. You know, that's a name that should be on other teams' lists as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that with Glenn Cook because Jared Payton, of course, who's one of the lead sports anchors at WGN Sports, they actually played together at Miami.
That's right.
So
I forgot about that.
There's a little tidbit there. What are names? Because there have been like all types of names. I won't go through all of them because there's so many. But Eric, I'll start with you. What is sort of like one of the names, either GM or coach or both, that you know Bears fans really need to keep a keen eye on?
Yeah, I'm going to pull my phone out here too because I was actually texting with a GM last night and somebody who knows him. But for the GM position, Joe Shane from Buffalo is a highly, highly respected talent evaluator. And so I asked him, we were kind of texting back and forth. And of course, I'm having a look as we talk here. And I just said, you know, what makes Joe special? What is that quality about him that you think can make him a GM? Great communicator, smart, strong work ethic, no ego, consensus builder, good evaluator, good relationships with the agent community. So, you know, sometimes we think about GMs as being guys who draft people. Well, that's true. That is certainly a big part of what they do. But contract negotiations were always something that seemed to trip Ryan Pace and the Bears up during his tenure there. You know, they overpaid for people. They structured deals in a way that I think hindered him at times. You know, letting Adrian Amos go to save $1.5 million for HaHa Clinton Dix, whatever. I mean, you can bring up a million different examples. So, you know, people miss on draft picks. Every single organization, I don't care if it's the Ravens, the Patriots, you know, the Green Bay Packers, whoever. Successful teams miss on draft picks. That's going to happen. Higher batting average, good. But it really does come down to how you put a roster together and how you keep your key players in place. That is such a big thing. You know, on the one hand, you give them credit for stealing a player like Allen Robinson, but on the other, you know, they weren't ever able to take advantage of him because of the limitations at quarterback and the coaching staff. So it is a giant puzzle piece that you have to put together, and there are a lot of skills required for that position. So Joe is a name that I think people should get familiar with because I think he'll be a GM. You know, much like George Payton, who went to the Broncos a year ago, he can be picky. He doesn't have to just take the first job offer he gets. And and maybe can look around a little bit. So is that a fit with the Bears? I don't know. Brian Daboll was a name that's come up with this job too. I think they've interviewed or requested an interview with him. That could be a possible pairing if you want to go with that continuity.
Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yes, you know what, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, those were very interesting candidates that I kind of had my own as well. I liked how Brian Daboll runs that offense out in Buffalo, and it seems like a lot of those philosophies would work with a kid like Justin Fields at quarterback. Um, being big and athletic like Josh Allen. And then there's also the think about it, typically these offensive guys are the guys that people lean towards as hiring as head coaches. And I'm linking it. We have a young quarterback. You bring in a defensive minded guy, even though he's a good candidate. You get an offensive coordinator who has some success with Justin Fields, and then right away he gets plucked for being a head coach. So I kind of get the sense you want to kind of lean towards an offensive guy because you can keep that language and that philosophy in house, and you don't have to worry about the offensive coordinator leaving because he has success. So I was very interested in Brian Daboll as a coach. Also, the guy that I'm interested in as well. I remember his last name, Khan, out of Pittsburgh. I forget his first name.
Yeah.
Omar Khan.
Yeah.
And you look at the track record, with Mike Tomlin and not having a losing season in over more than 10 years. Consistently get into the playoffs, and you can see that they have a way that they build a team and what they look for in certain kinds of players and in the success that they've had. And that's something that, in the culture that they have as well. And that's something that, that the Chicago Bears could use a lot.
And can I throw in one piece about Khan too, which is really interesting. I don't mean to hijack the show or whatever.
No,
I'm glad you brought it up because there's been a little bit of a trend, like I was talking about the scouting aspect, obviously a crucial element of being a GM, but there's a line of thinking along what I was saying with the relationship with agents and things like that, managing the salary cap. There's almost a line of thinking of you take somebody like Omar Khan, who's got the cap guy essentially, right? He's done more than that, but that was a big part of what he did, what he's done in Pittsburgh, and have a really strong college scouting director, maybe a senior scout or two, and really load up the scouting department with, and trust your people to do what they do best, and hire somebody who's, I don't want to call him a bean counter, right? I mean, he's got more talent than that, but somebody who understands the financial element of the job. And sometimes that structure, I feel like it's becoming more popular in the league. You're starting to see teams kind of warming up to that. And I wouldn't be shocked if there are one or two of those types of hires, including a guy like Omar, who's, he's 40, he's my age, roughly 44, 45. He's been in a successful organization for a long time that has stability. It's really what the pattern you want to follow, but it's hard to do too.
Yeah, and that's also very important because Ryan Pace got into a lot of cap trouble.
Yep.
And, and so a guy like Omar Khan would probably, be really attractive to Chicago Bears in that aspect.
Yep.
It's going to be very interesting, though, because like you guys have both mentioned, you got numbers people, you got analytics, old school folks. So it's going to be very interesting to see what direction the Bears decide to go. If you're watching or listening to the WARR NFL Playoff Preview Special here on WARR Media, I'm Lakina McGee along with Joe Tanksley and Eric Edholm. Now, where do you guys think the Bears coaching gig and also head GM gig kind of measures up, because you've got like multiple teams, including one of your own division, Minnesota. They're also looking for a head coach and a GM. Jacksonville's looking for a head coach. Denver is looking for a head coach. Miami unexpectedly is looking for a head coach. Las Vegas Raiders, assuming that they don't keep their interim coach. Also, the Giants they're cleaning house as well. So, where do you think the Bears gigs can kind of measure up? Because I heard Louis Riddick say on a couple of programs that the Bears gigs are probably like the highest, of all of them. So, what are your thoughts, Joe? I'll start with you.
I've read, Louis Riddick's comments, and I tend to agree with him. they drafted a blue chip quarterback, and whoever comes in as the GM, that's something they're going to have to worry about right away. They kind of get a little bit of time to kind of evaluate and build a roster around him, and so I think that would be exciting. But there's also you might not be a person that necessarily believes that he's the guy, so that's also a part of that as well. um but as far as, I mean, it's a historic franchise. It's a great football town. Everybody in Chicago is a Bears fan. And if if you can win here, we still celebrate the '85 Bears like it was yesterday here. So if you could, you can come here and win, much like the Cubs did, with Theo, you can pretty much write your ticket in the city, and this is a city that loves football, that's hungry for winning football, and the person that the people who could come in and bring that to the city, it's going to be pretty exciting for them, and for the fans as well.
All right,
Eric?
allow me to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I got skewered a little bit on Twitter for ranking the Bears as low as I did, because I ranked all the openings, and I said in the piece, you have the Giants, in my opinion, which is the biggest challenge of all of them right now. There's infighting among the scouts. There's an unclear structure. You have owners who've now making their fourth head coaching hire. I put them last. I believe I had the Broncos first, and I wouldn't say they're an overwhelming first. The other five teams, in my mind, you could almost, put in any other order and make a case for it. The reason I put the Bears towards the back end of the list was what we were talking about off the top. The succession plan of ownership scares me a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when I talked to somebody in a front office earlier this week, somebody who's interviewed for GM jobs in the past and wants eventually to become a general manager, they said, from his experience and people he's talked to, one of the biggest factors that people look at for the attractiveness of a position, like we talk quarterbacks and cap and draft picks, and they're all important, right? They all matter, but owners typically don't go anywhere, right? They're there to stay. People aren't dying to sell NFL franchises because they make bank, right? They make money. But if you have an owner who is meddlesome, if you have an owner who wants to get too involved in football operations, if you have an owner who doesn't have good business sense, I mean, all these different factors, it can really affect the football part of things, even if they're hands off when it comes to making transactional moves and things like that, or, deciding the fate of head coaches or whatnot. So it just scares me a little bit that, Virginia is the matriarch. She's the first lady of football, right? She's 99 years old. Is George taking over at that point? Would the family sell? Is there, the reason Bill Belichick claims, I don't know if he's telling the truth or not, but to have given up on the Jets job was he was not comfortable with the Jets ownership situation. And, that always stuck in the back of my head. And it seemed like he understood that he had a pretty good thing up the road in I-95 with Robert Kraft, whom he'd worked with before. It said, yeah, that's a guy I could work for. This new guy in New York, I don't know that I could work for him. And so that, of course, made one of the biggest moves in NFL history, him going to New England. It's not always going to be the case. And a successful head coach is probably going to do well no matter where they go eventually, or a GM for that matter. But, that worries me. And on top of that, as promising as Fields is, I loved him coming out. He was my number 2 quarterback last year. Still has a lot of work to do. We still got to see who's can they get somebody to kind of be that quarterback whisperer? You stand to possibly lose some free agents. There's some talent on defense, but the depth is a concern. They don't have a full till of draft picks. There's a financial area to clean up, as you guys were talking about earlier. So there's still some sweeping to do, and I think it's just going to be interesting to see how much there really is, and whether Ted and George stick with the agreed upon structure that they talked about the other day, or that George talked about the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be very interesting there. Now, real quick before we go to these wildcard weekend picks here, Jim Harbaugh is sort of like a name that's being floated around. Maybe he might be interested in coming back to NFL. Who knows? Eric, you're kind of plugged into to the college game as well. Do you think there's any truth to the rumors about Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, I should say, wanting to come back to the NFL?
I think Jim is a smart guy and an opportunistic guy, right? I mean, I think obviously going to Michigan was an opportunistic chance for him, and he seized the moment. It was the biggest thing that any Michigan grad had ever, undergrad for that matter. When he came there, it was like, Jesus in Bethlehem or something like that, right? It was a moment, right? Obviously, things hadn't really gone too well until this season, or at least up to the expectations that Michigan fans had. But I think he was smart to know, because there was rumors a year ago that maybe he was on the hot seat. He could never beat Ohio State, this and that, accomplished that this year, got into the playoffs. I think he was smart enough to kind of see that there's at least an opportunity here to get an extension at Michigan out of this thing. So, if the Raiders are coming and calling, right? John Gruden gets let go in November or whatever, or October, I guess. Was it November? Yeah, November. Yeah. And I think that was always a team that had eyes on Jim if they were ever to move on from Gruden. So, the stars aligned perfectly. Here he is, coming up on with a win over Ohio State. There's a vacancy in Vegas. The Bears are going to probably make a move too. Jim has obvious ties to the franchise. I don't even think Jim has an agent. I could be wrong about that, but I think
I heard he did it.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
He doesn't. He doesn't. I don't think he does.
Yeah. So, I mean, smart enough guy to sort of see everything lining up here, and that, hey, I could maybe work this thing. So my prediction is he'll probably stay in Michigan, but the Raiders are a possibility.
Joe, you got any thoughts on this?
As far as Jim Harbaugh, being in relation to the Bears, and him being the candidate for the Bears job, it all goes back to the beginning of them, interviewing GMs and head coaches. And to me, Jim Harbaugh is going to be one of those guys who wants to do both. He's going to want to, be like a Bill Parcells type, or Bill Belichick type, where he has control over the rosters and the moves that he's making to build his team. I think Jim, will want that kind of control, or he would, at least want to have a say so in who the Bears hire as the GM to be that guy, and if he can work with them. So that would be interesting, to see how that would play out, for the Chicago Bears. And also, I like that, at least when you get a guy like Jim Harbaugh as a coach, you're going to have an identity right away. And he's going to bring that culture that the Bears have been lacking for a while. And, you're going to know what the Bears what the Bears are good at and what they're leaning on as far as a team and their foundation. And it was a lot, kind of confusing with Matt Nagy as the coach. So, I mean, I'll say that about him, but I don't think he's going to leave Michigan. He has this kind of these college coaches, they get there and they pretty much run the whole university, the whole town. And that's a lot of control to give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to agree. I think ultimately he stays. I think he wants to bump up those bonuses that he gave up for a couple of years ago. Okay, guys, let's get to this weekend Super Wild Card Weekend games. Any games that you kind of see as sort of an upset, or you got there's at least two. You got New England and Buffalo, and of course the Monday Nighter Arizona. This is going to be their third meet this year. So, okay, this could be the upset, because we've seen a lot of upsets during Wild Card Weekend.
I don't know about you guys. I just have a feeling the Bills are gonna win and maybe win impressively. I mean, they went into Foxborough and took care of business a couple weeks back. The door was open for the Patriots to maybe steal the division if Buffalo's had lost and New England had gone down to Miami and won, but that didn't happen. And I kind of wonder if even without guys like Tre'Davious White, that the Bills might be just starting to hit their peak. I could be crazy. Maybe it's because I picked them back in August, but I have a feeling they beat New England. And I don't know. I'm a little worried about the Rams. I just like, even though the Cardinals really kind of slumped down the stretch, it just sort of, I'm getting the willies a little bit. They have the talent to make a run. There's no doubt, the high-end talent, but I just have that fear in the back of my head that, the Cardinals go in there with no pressure and might be able to pull it off.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning. I tend to agree with that. I think at the end of the day, you know, Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick, but he also has a rookie quarterback. I do think that Buffalo has the edge in talent. And I think they're primed to, make a pretty, deep playoff run. So I do like the Bills versus the Patriots. And I tend to agree about the Rams as well. They're definitely talented enough to get all the way to the Super Bowl. But Matt Stafford's never been in this position before, having to win playoff games and, lead a team on a deep, playoff run. And he, and when he faces that pressure, he has a lot of Cutler in him too. He'll give the ball up. So, he'll give the ball up. So I'm kind of worried about the Rams and how Matt Stafford will play. But I see that Eric Weddle retirement, to help the Rams on this playoff run. I don't know how much difference that's going to make, but that's pretty something, pretty cool to see. Other games that I'm looking at, I'm interested in the Cowboys. I'm interested in the Cowboys and see how they're going to do against the 49ers. I think, I'm really interested to see if Dak Prescott can take that next step into being the franchise quarterback. We saw how Dallas did without him last year, and how well they did with him this year. But that defense is what I'm really impressed with. Michael Parkins and Diggs on the back end, his corner. They generate a lot of turnovers and they generate a lot of pressure, and so I'm looking for that defense to carry him a little bit. And then, Ezekiel Elliott in that run game, he's been kind of banged up and, you haven't seen the burst that you're used to seeing from him. Is he going to get some new energy being in the playoffs? So I'm interested in the Cowboys as well. In the Bengals and the Raiders, that's kind of like a pick'em game to me. These are two teams that are similar. Both teams that the Bears beat. I like Joe Burrow and what Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase have going on out there in Cincinnati, and the Raiders. They've really rallied behind the quarterback David Carr since John Gruden left, and that coach Biacha. I think I'm saying his name right, but what they've been able to build out there, and and with all the adversity that they've gone through, with losing players to knucklehead and bad decisions and things like that, they've really rallied around David Carr. Oh, he's really stepped up to be a leader. So I'm interested in those games as well.
Eric, anything the other games that we haven't mentioned? Any of them kind of jump at you, intrigue you?
Yeah, I think Cincinnati's going to get its first playoff win in, I want to say 30 years. Is that right? Is that possible? 1991, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a celebration for Cincinnati, and good for them. Cowboys 49ers, definitely a tough game to pick, but if I like Dak at home a little bit better than Jimmy on the road. 49ers have a good team. I just don't know if they're built to win this game. So, the only thing that could trip up the Bucs is if the Eagles run like crazy. If Jalen Hurts is using his legs, if they get the run game going a little bit. I think the Bucs may start slowly, but I think eventually they'll win that game. And I think the Chiefs will win by 20. I mean, I just oh man, I can't see a path to victory for Pittsburgh. It's going to have to come on, 5 TJ Watt sacks and 3 more by Cam Hayward or something like that. And even then, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think there's any matchup that favors the Steelers. I'll put it that way. I really can't find one. Not a major one anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. That, although I will say that 49ers Cowboys game, that's giving me kind of like vibes from like way back when in the 90s when these two would play a lot in the playoffs. So that's kind of a pick'em game. And the spread here, Bengals They're a 5-point favorite. Bills are a 4.5-point favorite. Bucks are an 8.5 favorites. 3-point favorite. The Cowboys are 12.5 for the Chiefs, which you might take the over if you're, or maybe not. I don't know, but
That's it. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's the Vegas odds as of today. And also, last but not least, Cardinals and Rams. Rams are favored by 3.5. So,
Ooh, 3 and the tick. I might.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tempting. I may have to open an account this weekend.
yeah, right. But also too. I mean, the Cardinals and Rams game. This is like their third meeting. They split the first two games, and look, I kind of feel JJ Watts might be back. They're kind of getting healthy. I know they kind of slept the walk through their last couple of games, especially that last game against Seattle. But they know these teams know each other well, so I can see why ESPN picked this game to be the first Monday night playoff, wild card playoff game. Raiders and Bengals. I mean, yeah, the Raiders kind of backed into the playoffs. I feel like so. I don't know. They'll keep it close, but I think the Bengals will probably end up winning it. The Patriots Bills. I mean, if we get if it's like the first meeting where the Patriots kind of ran through the Bills, without having to throw a lot of passes. I don't know if we get that. Right, exactly. I mean, Eagles and Bucks. I really can't see the Eagles. Like you said, Eric. I mean, unless they run it down the Bucks' throats and they go crazy. That's been like the one sort of thing on the defensive side. Steelers and Chiefs. I don't. I mean, like I think you guys both mentioned, they're up 12.5. I don't like. But then again, you know what? You never know. They might surprise us. Like I said before, weird things happen in the Super Wild Card weekend. 49ers Cowboys. I think I think the fact that the Cowboys are only favored by 3. I think they know Vegas knows something that we don't. So, and yeah, so it's going to be very interesting these Super Wild Card games because I like I said before, we may see an upset, we may see 2 upsets. I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And our buddy Kyle said that wonder what okay, and he actually brings up a good point. What would be Madden's favorite game this week? John Madden, of course, wonder what
I'm thinking Niners at Dallas, right?
Of course.
Has to.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. I mean,
if they don't do some sort of like throwback, I don't know, like Boys to Men intro or something like that. How do you, whatever, something really super 90s with like a shadow of Madden in the background, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Like old clips or something from those games that he and Pat Summerall used to call because these two were in the same division for years. So
the best,
that was probably the best rivalry if you're an 80s and 90s kid. Like I said, Joe, I don't know how old you are, but those were really some great games to watch way back when on CBS. It's gonna be on CBS too. I know some people feel that maybe it was the Romo factor, but no, it was actually more Cowboys 49ers. I mean, especially during the playoffs. That was kind of like the thing.
And the beautiful thing is Madden worked for every broadcast company at one point or another, right? I mean, he started with CBS, went to Fox, NBC. So they all have to pay tribute, no matter what game it was. So, right, that works out pretty well.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap up our playoff preview for this week? Any like sort of, any things that that people should look out for, or what out of the ordinary type, things that might happen this weekend?
Out of the ordinary, I don't know. I kind of feel like we picked a lot of chalk. but out of ordinary, I think I think if I really can't see it. The only thing that would shock me is if the Steelers were able to win, honestly. And I don't really see that happening. I think, Mike Tomlin is a guy that, can definitely, get his guys motivated to play. I just don't think they have the talent to do it this year.
Eric, what about you?
I'll make a playoff / Bears observation here. We mentioned Brian Daboll. If the Bills go on a run, obviously they could hire Joe Shane for the GM position if they wanted to, right? It wouldn't have any, he might say, I'm going to join him after our playoff run is over, that kind of thing. I don't know that they'll be able to do that with Daboll. So the question is, would they pivot at that point? I'm just throwing out a possibility. Any playoff team where they're interviewing a candidate still running. I mean, Peterson Flores currently out of work. I'm just saying that maybe that tilts it that direction. I don't know. We've had issues in the past of, successful teams' assistants being a little bit handcuffed during a playoff run and not able to either accept a job right away or interview, a second or third time or something. So just something to think about and throw out there as if you're a Bears fan watching these games with a Bears head coaching candidate in mind.
Absolutely, and look, it's gonna be a lot of fun this weekend too.
Yeah,
we might see an upset. I don't know, but like I said before, weird things happen in the Super Wildcard weekend.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys so much for watching and listening to us today on our WARR Media NFL Playoff Preview Special. We're gonna be doing this every week. Okay, Joe, I'll start with you. Where can people find you? Read your stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter, Joe Tanksley. I'm at Batman_Tanksley on Twitter and IG. Usually I tweet during the games and stuff like that. So yeah.
My Twitter handle isn't nearly as cool. It's my name, Eric, ERIC_Edholm. I wish I had put a Batman or a Superman in there. I don't have that much self-confidence. I guess that's the issue. But yeah, Eric_Edholm and Yahoo Sports. So I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
No problem. And you can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG. You can also listen and watch me on Second City Sports every Monday and Friday live from noon to 2 p.m. Central Time on Sports Zone Chicago. You can also listen to the audio version right here on WARR Media through their various Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts on the podcast version. So for Joe and Eric, I'm Lakeena. This has been Second City Sport. Sorry, my bad. See, I forgot where I was for a second. This has been WARR Media NFL Playoff Preview Special, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a great night and stay safe out there.